Hello, St. Catherine's. It is Trey here. You cannot see me, but what you're looking at is my iPad screen. I'm doing a little screen recording. And I'm thinking about starting this new series of teachings, St. Cat's Shorts, which will be bite-sized video learning segments that you can take and study and look at your own convenience. And so today, what I've had pulled up in front of us, which I think might be a fun new way of sort of doing some Bible study, is to show you how I would go about interacting with the text. So I am preaching this Sunday, and what I have before us is the biblical text, the gospel text, for this upcoming Sunday, the last Sunday of Epiphany. Now, remember, in this season of Epiphany, the theme of our readings is the ways in which Jesus Christ is being revealed, that his true identity is being revealed as the Son of God, not only to the Jewish people, but to the Gentiles, to the world. And so we sort of culminate the season of Epiphany here with this scene of the Transfiguration. And so I'm just going to play around with this text, show you some things that stand out to me, and maybe we'll leave with a devotional reflective question here. But the first thing to note that you'll see me interacting with the text, and let me go ahead and read the text for us, and then I'll start interacting with it. Jesus took with him Peter, James, and John, and went up to the mountain to pray. And while he was praying, the appearance of his face changed, and his clothes became dazzling white. Suddenly they saw two men, Moses and Elijah, talking to him. They appeared in glory and were speaking of his departure, which he was about to accomplish at Jerusalem. Now Peter and his companions were weighed down with sleep, but since they had stayed awake, they saw his glory and the two men who stood with him. Just as they were leaving him, Peter said to Jesus, "Master, it is good for us to be here. Let us make 3 dwellings, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah," not knowing what he said. While he was saying this, a cloud came and overshadowed them, and they were terrified as they entered the cloud. Then from the cloud came a voice that said, "This is my son, my chosen. Listen to him." When the voice had spoken, Jesus was found alone, and they kept silent in those days, told no one any of the things they had seen. On the next day, when they had come down from the mountain, a great crowd met him. Just then a man from the crowd shouted, "Teacher, I beg you to look at my son. He is my only child." Suddenly a spirit seizes him, and all at once he shrieks. It convulses him until he foams at the mouth. It mauls him and will scarcely leave him. I begged your disciples to cast it out, but they could not. Jesus answered, "You faithless and perverse generation, how much longer must I be with you and bear with you? Bring your son here." While he was coming, the demon dashed him to the ground in convulsions, but Jesus rebuked the unclean spirit, healed the boy, and gave him back to his father. And all were astonished at the greatness of God. Now, so this is our gospel text, and the first thing I'm looking at is, who are our characters here in this text? And so I'll just briefly mark those here for us. We got Jesus, of course. We got Peter, John, and James, and this is like the core inner group here. This is sort of like the inner circle. And pardon this writing too, but so you had the 12 disciples, of course, and then you had this more intimate trio here, Peter, James, and John, and they go up with him to this mountain. And now it has, and I'll put interesting sort of things in blue here. Of course, mountains are associated with revelations of God. They are places where one encounters God. And of course, that is one of the reasons why we have these 2 Old Testament figures show up, Moses and Elijah. Now, both of these figures had mountaintop encounters with God, but also there's sort of a theological point being made here. So out of all the Old Testament figures, why these 2? Why is it that Luke is telling us that Moses and Elijah appeared? Well, Moses here represents for us the law. Right, Moses received the the 10 Commandments, the law from God on Mount Sinai, and so he is the figurement, the embodiment of all the Jewish law. Elijah then is representative of the prophets. Those figures who would be raised up among the Israelites to call them back to the teachings and the way of God, to call them back to the law. And so in these two figures, you have the fullness of Jewish law and the Jewish prophetic tradition. And what are they doing? They are talking. They are conversing with Jesus here. They appeared in glory, and they were having a little get-together, Jesus, Moses, and Elijah. Now, we talked about this is part of Epiphany, and we see this great revelation of who Jesus is on this mountain. And let's see, what are some things? Jesus appeared in glory. Let's see, what else we got here? It says that Jesus' face changed, right? That his clothes became dazzling white. We also see a cloud. Cloud is often another symbol for the presence of God, sort of shrouding the glory of God. It was, it's thought of that we cannot experience the glory of God directly, and so it has to come to us sort of through the cloud. It has to be sort of hidden a little bit from us. And this is a powerful thing that, as I was doing my studies, stood out to me. Of course, Jesus is sitting here talking with Moses and Elijah. But after the voice comes that says, "This is my son, my chosen, listen to him," the voice of God, which is given, it's sort of this public endorsement of God, right? All these epiphany scenes, all the miracles that Jesus has been doing have been pointing to who Jesus really is. And then here in the last Sunday of Epiphany, during this transfiguration here, we have the final verdict given, the voice of God. You can't get much clearer than this. God speaking directly to them, saying, "This is indeed my son." Everything that this Jesus figure has been doing, everything he's been saying about himself, it is true. Listen to him. And then after that voice had spoken, Jesus was found alone. So sort of the theological point here is we see Jesus standing alone, but just earlier we were seeing Moses and Elijah with him, but now Jesus is alone, as if to say Jesus now is the embodiment, the figurative presence of both Elijah and Moses, right? That in his own figure, Jesus now embodies truthfully and fully both the law and the prophets. So Jesus isn't interested in eradicating these things, but rather to see this figure, this Jesus, as embodying both of those elements, to be the figurative representative of those. Powerful theological statement. Now, of course, we've all had, I'm sure all of us have had, mountaintop experiences, right? We've all had those experiences. Maybe you've been to Camp Michael, maybe you've gone on a spiritual retreat, but we've all have had these sort of mountaintop experiences, right? Where the presence of God is just seen, it's felt, it's heard. We get a clear sense of who Jesus is, who we are, what we are to do, and we walk away and reinvigorated, right? We have the spiritual high, we may want to call it. But then the time comes where we have to come down from the mountain, right? At some point we have to come down the mountain to the valley, right? And I'll just draw a little valley here. We have to come back down to the mundane, the everyday. We have to come back to schoolwork and homework and back to our 9-to-5 job, back to the everyday sort of the rhythms of normal living. And this might be where a devotional piece comes for us, a reflection piece. As they came back, and I want to draw our attention to this man here, this courageous man. And he comes to Jesus and he says, "Teacher, I beg you to look at my son." And that's the devotional reflection here, to look. Now, this man is calling Jesus to look at something that otherwise would be, terrifying. right? I mean, this scene that is being painted for us isn't necessarily something I think I would want to look at, right? We have this child who is seized by a spirit. He's shrieking. He's convulsing with foam. He is being mauled at. He's being tormented. This child is being tormented. And so he comes to Jesus. And notice sort of the juxtaposition, or maybe another word is sort of the ironic comparison, right? We just had this powerful scene of God on the mountain, and immediately we're taken to this scene that's hard to look at. This scene of basically the absence of God, right? This demonic influence upon this child. It's almost as if God is absent in the scene. But look what the man asked Jesus to do. He doesn't necessarily start by saying heal him. Of course, that is what he's wanting Jesus to do. But it's interesting. He said, "I want you to look at my son." To look at my son. Just as the disciples were trying to look upon the glory of Jesus up here in the mountaintop experience, now Jesus is being called on to look at us, to look at our condition, to look at the thing that brings us pain and trouble and hardship. Jesus, would you look at the thing that is tormenting me? Would you look at the thing that is tormenting my son, as ugly as it is? And maybe some of us are feeling that way even now, even in these days, right? We may have things that are hard to look at. We may be experiencing and undergoing things in life that other people may want to just avoid and not give attention to. And how many of us have wanted in moments of time for a friend, a loved one, a family member to just acknowledge, to just look at what hardships we are going through, and in compassion and grace to be there for us and with us. I get the sense that that's what this man was wanting, and maybe it's the devotional reflection for us today is what in our lives that might be hard to look at, but nonetheless there's something deep within us that calls us to cry out to Jesus and say, "Would you look?" Of course, we've heard news about Russia invading Ukraine. Of course, we still are living at the hopefully the last parts of a global pandemic. There's so much that we are going through and experiencing. What is it today in this season of Epiphany that you simply want to bring before Jesus and say, "Look, would you just look and be with me and remind me that I am not alone, that there is someone else who can acknowledge the pain that I'm going through." So just a little thoughts for us this day. Hope it's helpful. If this does prove helpful, who knows, it may become a series for us, but just different ways to approach the biblical text, different things to think about as it is both relevant and applicable to our lives today. I wish you well and blessings to you all, friends.